Thank you very much. Welcome, Kate and Dan.
Hello.
Hello, and thank you so much for joining us for this industry panel. So the trailers pretty much set the tone for the questions, I think. So I'll start right away with asking you both about the genres that you edit, I guess, because the trailers are from films that are very different, whose audiences might be very different as well, and expectations might be very different. So perhaps I start with you, Kate. Do you have a certain... do you get called in to edit certain types of trailers for certain types of films?
No, I think the great thing about editing trailers is that one week you could be working on a horror, the next a comedy, and it really keeps it fresh and keeps, flexing those genre muscles so you don't get stuck into doing one genre. I think definitely at the agency I work on, they really want us all to be really good at cutting every genre. But I know it's different for, like, I don't know, maybe you cut a particular maybe style
then you're
or
freelancer, right? Again, Kate, you work within an agency, so you work slightly differently.
Yeah, I mean, I think I sort of have my sort of speciality areas. I mean, both of those that were shown there were both obviously re-release trailers, and that's a sort of a passion of mine, and things that's sorts of projects I've sort of actively pursued. But I'd absolutely agree with Kate that the really fun thing is that you're getting a huge variety of things often. So you don't feel like you're sort of getting too stagnant in one particular sort of style or one particular genre or one particular type of film. You can, as you said, sort of flex those muscles in sort of different areas of filmmaking. Yeah,
there's definitely different techniques as well that are used in, say, horror or, a comedy stop down that, are very particular to those kind of genres.
So this is a bit of a maybe started question, but if you're a trailer editor, does that imply that you also edit films, or no? It's very much a speciality onto itself.
So on the side, I love cutting long form and short films for my friends' films. But yes, in the agency, we work purely on trailers, promos, social campaigns, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Same with me. From my experience, there isn't a lot of fluidity between, editors going from trailers to long form and things like that. Often long form is its own sort of beast that people have sort of specialised in and are working in sort of constantly. Whereas trailer editor is its own sort of like separate or sort of short form, I guess it's called, that you have sort of speciality editors working in.
And do you have certain, I guess, codes that you need to follow, or do you have a certain level of creativity and leeway in how you package this?
In terms of sort of like advertising regulations and things like that, or are you talking about sort of working to like a brief or
working to a brief, I guess.
Yes. So it depends on the project really, and the client you're working with. Some are more involved in the briefing process. They can come to you and they can sort of say, this is how we want to position the film, or particular aspects of the film that they maybe don't want included in the trailer that they want to keep sort of hidden. And you can sort of go from there. They might even go so far as to sort of suggest types of music and things like that to use. Or there's the other end of that where, they might just give you a few lines about, what they need, and the brief is just entirely open and you sort of go from there. So you can have sort of both ends of the spectrum really. Inevitably, what ends up happening is you go through rounds of feedback either way. What you send on to the client, they then sort of will have sort of notes back on that as you sort of like get closer to what they're sort of looking for. But the initial jumping point can be either very specific or very open.
Has that been your experience as well?
Yeah, definitely. It really varies project to project. Some clients give extensive briefs. Some clients are just like, do what you want, see what you come up with. And they're quite fun. I like those projects.
Well, do you both cut, I'm going to say just in brackets, feature films, or do you work on, say, like we have here at the Garden Cinema, seasons of films or anthologies or things like that?
Yeah, it can be a series, an episodic program, or feature films. Both.
Yeah, I do a lot of season trailers as well. So for like cinema season trailers. But around that as well, there's all sorts of things for what goes into like what you'd call like a social campaign that distributors use. So cut downs, sort of social assets, things that get used on social media and things like that for promoting the film. Those all sort of form a sort of day-to-day part of the work as well.
So how does that work? So if say you have a feature film and you've created a trailer for a feature film, you take images from the film and so on. If you're doing a season, how does the selection process work? What are you trying to create for the audience, for the general public, out of all those films and all that content?
For me, it's I want to give sort of like an authentic sort of entry point, or sort of like hit some sort of like emotional resonance of what that filmmaker is like. Some recent ones that I've done are the Chantal Akerman season that's on at the BFI at the moment. That was, I mean, it depends from editor to editor how sort of involved you get, but I tend to get quite involved in those sort of retrospective projects. Both as a sort of my sort of due diligence as an editor, but also just because I'm very interested in that. So I do a lot of diving into that work, and I'll give it a lot of attention. But that all takes a lot of time, as you can imagine. If there's a huge number of films that go into a season trailer, perhaps sort of 10 and upwards, watching those, making selects, building a trailer out of all of that material it's very time consuming. Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, so I do less season stuff, but I can imagine, your storytelling, even through, whatever you're working with, whether it's like multiple films or just the one film, when you make your selects, you're looking for the best imagery, you're looking for the best dialogue for the story that you're trying to tell. Episodic stuff is I do quite a lot of episodic stuff, and you're going through a huge amount of material, so you just have to be really selective when you're going through it, and storytelling through imagery and music and dialogue.
I have a question. I'm going to open it up to the audience, by the way, but just to give a bit of background and context to what you do, if you don't mind telling us a bit more about how you got into the field of editing, as it comes from a huge breadth of experiences. So how about you, Dan?
I think both me and Kate were talking about this before, about how we both have maybe sort of slightly atypical ways of sort of getting into editing. The traditional route would be to sort of work as a runner, and then sort of like progress through a sort of like edit assistant sort of role before you start working as a junior editor. I myself came from before working as an editor, I was working in social media marketing, but I was editing sort of pieces of video content for that, and sort of built up a sort of portfolio of things that way, and was doing little sort of season trailers for archive collections. And as I was sort of pursuing more of the sort of marketing side of it, I realized that I was actually really drawn to more of the editing side of it. And sort of went from there. So it wasn't something that I sort of necessarily set out in my career to do, but as I got sort of more experience with things, I kind of it was something that I sort of found a real sort of taste for, and something that I ultimately ended up sort of throwing my weight behind.
So I studied fine art, and during my degree I made a lot of video artwork, and I loved the process of just cutting clips down and selecting the best footage that I had filmed. But I never really realised, I didn't really think about it as a career, and I was in a band at the time and I was mixing an album, and I said to the mixer, I kind of want to get into editing. And so he was like, oh, I got a friend who does that, and put me in touch with someone that we have both worked with, and then started editing. So it was through my network, really.
Before I open it up, I have a question which comes from one of our colleagues out there in the bar. What's the gold standard of trailers? And I also thinks he's implying, tell us one of your favourite trailers.
It's putting me on the spot a bit, but this is going back a ways now. But one that's always really, really stuck with me from when I saw it was the trailer for A Serious Man by the Coen brothers. And it had this sort of motif to it, or the structure around it, where the main character's getting his head sort of like smacked against a blackboard, and that sort of carries on throughout it, and it creates a sort of a rhythm that the trailer then sort of like builds around, and it's sort of like it creates this sort of like building sort of intense moment, and you can probably see a direct link between that and probably something like the Jeanne Dielman trailer that I did, because there's a very similar sort of building of tension and rhythm. That's something that's always stuck in my mind. So when I think about what's some of the sort of things that have influenced me, certainly that would be one of them.
Yeah. I don't know who cut this trailer, but it's a trailer for a film called Name Me Lawand, and it is really beautiful. It just makes me feel so many things. And I think my favourite trailers, beyond the trickery of editing, because we do it as a day job, we know what tricks people use. But I think beyond that, it's the sound design and the score that's used and the imagery. I think it's just really poetic and beautifully cut.
Nice. Interestingly, the director of Name Me Lawand was one of our second panelist on the industry panel to talk about documentary filmmaking. So sat right there. Yeah, it's a really beautiful film. Thanks for that. I'm going to open it up to the audience for questions. I'd just like to flag, in case some of you haven't noticed, we filmed the industry panels so that they're accessible on our YouTube channel for anyone who's missed any of them and wants to catch up. So if you want to ask a question but you don't want to be featured in the resulting film, just flag it to us at the end and we'll just edit it out, no problem. So yes, first questions. Out in the already I was going to say first is tricky, but there we go. I have one there, second row, and then one fifth, I think. Thank you.
I thought all the trailers were great. I want to see all of those films now, straight off the bat. So all of them are fantastic. The one that really struck me was it Chantal Akerman, did you say? Who I know nothing about. But what was really powerful about that for me was there was no dialogue in it. And it was all kind of sound and image building towards that kind of crescendo where she sat in the room on her own. And that last thing was just mint. It was like a film in and of itself. So when you're cutting something like that, is there a nod there towards the director's own style as well? Because I've never seen a film by that director.
Well, thank you for the kind words, first of all. And yeah, absolutely. A lot of ways the style of the trailer can sort of come from the style of the director and the tone of the film. That film is obviously it's very sparse on plot and very big on mood and sitting in places and sort of feeling time pass by, and that's something that I really wanted to capture. There is dialogue in the film, but it's sort of almost sort of decoration around everything else that's happening. So it's not there aren't any sort of pieces of plot that you can sort of like use to pull out. And I did experiment with a few lines early on, and then as I sort of built the piece and was sort of understanding where it was going, it felt much stronger just without. But that all, it all stems from the style of the film. So that's always kind of what's at the forefront of my mind when I'm putting something together. Yeah.
Thanks for the question. We had one, I think, if you raise your hand. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just wondering, you have a dialogue with your clients. during the editing process, you know, sending them back in to see what they think of it, do they give you much leeway to add something from your own ideas, like music, for example, you know, to enhance the trailer more?
Yeah, absolutely. There's often times where the dialogue just isn't in the film that you need. So I've often just recorded it myself. You know, just a line like, "Who are they?" or like, "Where are we going?" or like... and then in one of the trailers that we showed, we had a really low budget for music. So I had to really do everything that I could possibly do to that track to make it feel bigger. And I just sung along. I got me and my producer to just sing some extra hums just to like make it sound a bit different. And or you can like pitch shift stems, like really get into the nitty gritty of the music you're working with. And also with graphics as well, I added the "Are you content?" just to hammer home that message. Are you content? But using things in the film to inform it. The Joseph Alba's artwork informed the colours. So yeah, you do have to get quite creative often when you're dealing with films that maybe need help.
Which one is it that you're singing on? Which trailer was it? Is it the mariachi?
Turn Me On one.
Oh, Turn Me On.
Keep an eye out for that now. Yes, one question in the front row, and then I'll come back to you and yourself.
Presumably can hear me from here, but I already sort of know the answer a little bit, Dan, but I'm interested that you're also a musician, because I'm really interested in your trailers, how sound driven they are and how they feel like little musical pieces often. And I feel like I'm listening to, not that it looks shit, but I feel like I'm listening to it more than I'm watching often. And I feel that way with trailers quite a lot. But you were the same, you're a musician as well, you said. And do you think that musical background for both of you has that sort of led you into making things that are shorter than long form? And does that inform your style when you're cutting, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of editors actually that are musicians, because it is so, or trailer editors that are musicians, because it is so rhythmical. And you have to know kind of if things are in key and, you know, the time signatures and stuff. But yeah, music really informs the cutting style. It informs everything. I would say music is the most important thing in the trailer.
I would, totally agree. It's the first thing I'm thinking about when I'm putting sort of an assembly together. I do spend a lot of time sort of looking for music and thinking about what music matches, because sound and image just feel very sort of like linked in my mind, and so it's sort of setting the sort of the tone for what sort of images you want to show, but also at the same time it's sort of setting the rhythm for the edit as well. So it all stems from like a really good sort of sound bed. That's sort of like, I sort of think of it as that, you know, you start from that's your foundation and you're building from the ground up. And in regards to sort of being musically minded, I think it is a real unsung skill of editing. I think it's something it's definitely sort of like a weapon in a sort of editor's arsenal, because just understanding how about pieces of music being in key and things like that, being able to sort of manipulate audio, thinking about how one piece of music leads from one onto another, those are all sort of things that, you know, they're not particularly technical, but they come from a sort of having messed around with music before and kind of understanding how those things can sort of all link together. So yeah, music is extremely important.
Thank you very much for that question. We had one, I think, fourth row. Am I right? No, further up, up there, and then one in the. Thank you. Trying to keep track.
Hi. I had two questions, if that's okay. First was just whether the two of you could talk about your process of sort of first watching a film, and are there moments that immediately stick out to you? Is there like one hook that you kind of build the rest of it around? Sort of how does that work? And also how many times might you have to watch something before finalising it? And secondly, is there a feeling that AI is going to come in and people are going to start using AI, or are there also ways that it actually could be helpful to kind of speed up some of the process, or is it just a danger that people will just pass that over to AI instead?
I have very strong feelings about AI, but maybe
you do.
But maybe you should answer we'll answer the first one.
Yes, which was
how many times do you watch the film?
So you watch. Well, I get a film, I watch it without taking notes or anything. I just want to take it in, have my first impressions of the film, and then I'll start breaking it down. So I'll make the dialogue selects, and then I will make a picture selects without listening to the dialogue, without listening to the film. So it's purely, I'm trying to divorce the image and the sound in my mind so I can jumble it all together at the end. And so I'll make 20 minutes of dialogue selects, 20 minutes of picture selects if it's a feature film. And then, do a music search and start putting stuff on the timeline. And then it all just
seeing what, magically.
Seeing what sticks. But I generally, when you watch the film, you kind of know, something sticks out there, or what dialogue is really grabbing you. What could be a nice moment to focus on, drop out the music and linger on a scene or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in that sort of first initial watch, I'd say I'm just pulling out stuff that I think is just has some potential, some way, either visually, either just a striking image or a piece of dialogue that either can convey a lot of plot or can convey a theme. And again, similar, just put all those in a sort of a 20-minute timeline, and just sort of be browsing those until some sort of inspiration sort of hits. But inevitably, there's things that you missed the first time, and you end up, scrubbing through the film tens, if not hundreds of times before the process is over. So you become extremely familiar with the film, and what goes where. You see a shot and you go, I know roughly just about where that is in the whole film. And to speak to AI, so AI can mean a whole variety of things. Everything from sort of like Netflix algorithms to like pieces of audio software that I use to like clean dialogue, technically come under the sort of very broad umbrella of AI. But I think the thing that's got everyone spooked, and that is the big talking point at the moment, is these large language model AIs, which is also ties into these generative AI. So things like ChatGPT and what are the image ones, like Luma and Sora, things like that. Which you sort of put in a prompt or whatever, and it's like an astronaut on Mars or something in the style of Picasso, and it will produce you like an image of that or a video of that. In terms of that sort of like making its way into the industry, there's, at the moment, my feeling is there is such a huge gap between what is being promised and what's there, to the point where I don't think any sort of creative person will see this, what's being produced by this, and think that it actually has any sort of real value beyond maybe maybe a starting point or something. But where it is being pushed is by company owners and people who control money, because the whole point of it is that it is able to produce something that sort of looks somewhat passable and costs a fraction of what it would to employ someone. So the risk is really, if you're talking about from a creative level of these large language models, I'm not worried about it holding a candle really to, I think even the worst editor could do a better job than the best AI as it stands. And I think there's a gulf there that will never be breached personally. But these things will sneak in slowly. But they're not coming from creatives, they're coming from people who are sort of imposing them for money costing things. In terms of like whether or not these are any of them are actually sort of useful, I don't know. I haven't really messed around with them in any sort of way. But what do
I
you
would
think?
say things like in Avid, which is the software I use, things like phrase find. I would say that was AI, maybe.
Again,
Is
like
it?
that might be AI, but is it sort of a generative AI? I don't know what's the sort of where the cutoff point between what.
It basically finds, it scans through the material and finds phrases. So you'll, I don't know, be really, I don't know, the deadline will be really like quick, and I need a hey or a they or to make a sentence up that I need. So I'll just quickly go hey, and then it will find all the heys in the material. So that's potentially quite useful. I do find that useful, but other than that, we don't really.
Yeah,
it's not really.
No, and I don't think that's the sort of stuff that's coming to sort of revolutionise or change people's jobs. Those are sort of convenience AIs. I think the idea of sort of like generative AI, sort of like cutting a trailer, it may very well appear, but I don't think it will be coming from a sort of a creative push. It will be coming from somewhere else. Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you very much. Yes, I had a question. Third row, please, and then one over there. Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, good evening. I have a sort of, to be honest, a love-hate relationship with trailers, because if it's a film I'm not aware of, I go to see the trailer and it can entice me to see it. A good example, today I saw the trailer for the new Steven Soderbergh film, Black Bag, and that really did entice me to see the film. If it's a film I'm aware of and looking forward to, I go and see the trailer, and sometimes it can ruin the film for me. It's almost like it shows too much, whether it's humor, it's showing all the best jokes, whether it's, June 2, for example, last year, I really wanted to see, but I didn't want to see the trailer 6 times, because when I saw the film in its, in full length, the things didn't land as well for me, because I've seen it so many times, the trailer. So the question after that comment is, how difficult is it for you to get the balance right to entice people to see the film without giving too much away? Or is it sometimes a difficulty with the brief that you've got to show certain things?
Yeah, I also have a love-hate relationship with trailers. Yeah, it's a difficult balance. I would never want to give too much away at all. I think less is more. But yeah, you have to, there's lots of stakeholders. Your client will want something. Something will say, yeah, it'll be on the brief, and you have to kind of push back sometimes, but then also do what the client says as well. So I think there's a balance to be struck, but I also hate when trailers give everything away. It's just really annoying.
Yes, I know entirely what you mean. It's a really difficult balance to get, and there can be a little bit of push and pull in terms of how much you want to give away, how much the client wants to give away or not give away, what are sort of some of those key things to get in there, and the worst thing that you want is for it to become grating over time of having watched it. There was this is sort of slightly related, but in that the apartment trailer, originally I had sort of ended it with the line that's right at the end of the film, where he says, I love you, and she says, shut up and deal. And I'd ended it on that because it felt like a nice little romantic button to end the film on. But the client, quite rightly sort of said, well, we're positioning this for new audiences. It sort of gives away the fact that they're together by the end, And I was seeing it as a classic film. I wasn't seeing it as a film. And so even though, for my own ego, I really liked it being in there, once you take it out, it does actually make it a sort of a stronger piece. To answer your question, how do you not give too much away? I mean, it's a little bit of trial and error. My sort of feeling is, if I've watched it 100 times myself and it's not annoying me, hopefully other people will feel the same way.
Thank you.
Fair enough. Thank you very much for that question. We had a hand at the back. Yes. Thank you.
Hello, hi. I loved both of your trailers. I thought they were fab. I've got 2 questions, if I may. One was about, sort of following on from the last question about rather than how you get the balance in terms of plot, how you get the balance right in terms of, or how you match the film in terms of tone. There was a trailer recently, I'm not going to say in case either of you worked on it, where I've been going around telling everyone to see the film because I felt there was a real mismatch in the tone, and that's been, I think, putting people off seeing the film. So that's my first question, is about any kind of particular
you have to give us the trailer name now.
The Apprentice.
Okay.
Oh, don't worry. I don't think
Okay,
that's
phew. I think, yeah. I think the trailer makes it feel sort of celebratory, and it's anything but. And my second question is just about client feedback. Is your client always just the distributor, or are you ever kind of indirectly or directly getting feedback from the director, producer, screenwriter?
I'll answer that last one first while it's fresh in my mind. So normally we work on, if you're working on public-facing films or public-facing trailers, you're working directly with the distributor, and normally you're looking for sign-off from them. However, they will have a relationship with the director, and so very often they will, they will have sort of, external stakeholders, including the filmmaker, who that they will send that on to for approval. Not always, but sometimes they may have, an agreement in their sort of contract of picking up the distribution deal of the filmmaker having sign off, or the production team having sign off on the trailer. But it varies from case to case. But if you're working on a whole other sort of style of trailer, which is sort of like business to business stuff, which can be like for sales or festival sort of promos, things like that. You can very often then be dealing. You're not dealing with a distributor. You're either dealing with a sales agent or the filmmakers directly themselves. So on those sorts of occasions, they can have a sort of a direct input into that sort of thing. And can you remind me what the first question was as well? Oh, the tone. Yeah, go on.
So lots of. It's interesting because I'm working on a trailer at the moment, and there's already a trailer out for the US, but I'm doing a UK trailer. They want to position it. It's a sort of family animation film, and they want to position it much more commercially, and like an adventure packed animation, which it isn't really. So you just have to get creative, and it's all about the music, really. Like, you have to choose more commercial music, faster paced cutting, more dropouts, more comedic dropouts, different copy. The copy is often or different quotes that, this is a film for kids and adults, instead of maybe more of an arty kind of copy. But I often have to missell the movie, or point it in a different direction, which is part of the fun, actually. Sometimes it's like, how do I turn this comedy into a horror?
People are very nervous about that now after the historic legal case of Ana de Armas being in the Yesterday trailer, but not showing up in the film. And they were Ana de Armas fans sort of kicked off about it. So now people can be quite sort of nervous about it, about sort of misrepresenting or misselling the film. It does go on, but I'd say, if you see a trailer and you think that's not like the film at all, I'd say 9 times out of 10 it's not the editor's fault. It's not like a mistake. Do you know?
You've been told it.
You've been told.
Oh, well, really good point there. Yes, we have another. Just checking how we're doing for time. One more question. Oh, wow! Sorry, pressure. Okay. Yes, one question there. Yes, just there. Thank you. That will be our last one, I guess.
The great trailers and talk. Thank you. I wondered, you mentioned deadlines, and I just wondered if you're doing a season or a series, the real-time pressures of watching that amount of material. You said you go through everything. I mean, are you doing like, if you've got a deadline, you're doing like 16-hour days or something? How do you do it? And is it hard?
Sometimes with series, you don't have time to go through everything, but you'll go through the first 3 episodes and then the rest you'll scrub. But yeah, I mean, it would be lovely to get 2 weeks for a V1, but it's turning into a week, 5 days, 4 days to do a V1 for a film or a series.
Yeah, I think because you're at a slightly bigger agency, things like that means that, I mean, not always, but you can sort of get help around sort of being able to sort of get edit assistants and things like that, being able to sort of pull selects and things. So it's not and the producer is also familiar with the work as well. So it's not the only onus on the editor to be able to sort of pick those things up. The sort of the benefit for me is working independently is that, well, it's a blessing and a curse because, I can sort of work when I want, but that I can't, pass the work off on to anyone else. So, and it depends how thorough you want to be. So for like season trailers, again, I said I watch all the material because I'm interested in it, and and I feel like it's my sort of due diligence. But sometimes you do have to watch it at double or maybe even quadruple speed to be able to get through it all. But that for me is actually probably the easiest part. That's the part I enjoy the most, is sort of absorbing all of the material. So it is time consuming, but I wouldn't call that part difficult. That part's actually just quite enjoyable. Yeah.
Well, we have one to, okay, that's nice. One last question. Yes, right in the front.
Too much build up. Have you ever delivered a trailer without the music stem, like the Mummy trailer? And if not, would you do it just for fun?
I mean, I've got clients in the audience tonight, so my professional answer is no. I would never do that. I don't really know how that, because that's an infamous case, isn't it? I don't really know how that happened. But luckily, touch wood, I've never had a gaffe like that.
Yeah, same. I don't think so.
Is that for newbies like myself? Was that a famous case in the industry?
Yes,
then?
So this was the Tom Cruise The Mummy film, circa 2017, I think it was. And when the trailer first went live, they somehow uploaded a version that didn't have the music on, so it only had the sort of strange sort of isolated vocals of Tom Cruise, and then all of the sort of like strange isolated effects. And it it really took off. I don't know. It's a real like sleeper marketing hit. If you want to do it. But luckily, nothing like that's happened to me yet.
Well, that was a really good one to end it on. Well done. Thank you so much, everyone. That really flew by. We'll have a chance to mingle and chat more in the bar if Kate and Dan are happy to stick around just a bit longer. Thank you again for joining us for this industry panel. Hope to see you at the next one. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.